Imagine this spine-chilling moment frozen in high-definition clarity, a quiet suburban street at 2:17 a.m. in 2024, when a brand-new Ring doorbell camera suddenly lights up with motion detection and begins recording a masked figure in a black hoodie slowly approaching a sleeping family's front porch. The intruder pauses, glances directly at the lens as if sensing danger, then turns his head just enough for the night vision to capture a single, unmistakable scar above his left eyebrow, the exact same scar police sketches had described 2 decades earlier in a brutal unsolved murder file from 2004. In that split second of crystal-clear footage, a 20-year-old cold case that had destroyed one family and haunted an entire town suddenly roared back to life, proving once and for all that some monsters never truly disappear. They simply wait for technology to finally catch up and expose them in the one place they thought they were invisible. This is the heart-pounding true story of the Ring camera that didn't just catch a burglar, it solved a murder that time itself had almost erased forever. It was a warm August evening in 2004 in the peaceful suburban neighborhood of Maplewood Heights, where porch lights glowed softly and the distant laughter of children playing tag still echoed down tree-lined streets long after sunset. Sarah Kline, a vibrant 28-year-old single mother with a smile that could light up the darkest room, had just finished tucking her 6-month-old baby boy into his crib after a long day of work at the local library and an evening of gentle rocking and lullabies. Sarah was the kind of woman who baked cookies for new neighbors and volunteered at the community center, her life a tapestry of quiet kindness woven around the tiny miracle sleeping upstairs. She stepped outside to water the hanging ferns on her front porch one final time before bed, the humid summer air heavy with the scent of freshly cut grass and distant barbecue smoke, completely unaware that evil was already watching from the shadows across the street. The attack came without warning, swift and merciless, as a hooded figure emerged from the darkness of the driveway with a knife glinting under the street lamp. Sarah fought desperately, her screams piercing the night and waking several neighbors who later described hearing frantic footsteps and a single guttural cry that ended abruptly in a horrifying silence. Blood pooled on the concrete where she fell, her body discovered the next morning by a concerned coworker who had come to check why she hadn't shown up for her shift. The baby inside had miraculously slept through the horror, later found safe, but forever marked by the absence of the mother who had given him everything. Police swarmed the scene within minutes, but the killer had vanished like smoke, leaving behind only a single partial fingerprint on the porch railing, and a town shattered by the randomness of such pure violence in a place everyone had always called home. For weeks, the investigation consumed the small community, with detectives working around the clock interviewing every neighbor, canvassing every street, and chasing leads that all seemed to dissolve into dead ends. Sarah's family, her devastated parents and younger sister, pleaded on local news for anyone with information to come forward, their tear-streaked faces becoming the heartbreaking symbol of a tragedy that refused to make sense. The partial print and a few faint shoe impressions were the only physical evidence, but in 2004, the technology simply wasn't there to turn those fragments into a name or a face. Rewards were offered, psychics consulted, and community vigils held under flickering candlelight, yet the case gradually slipped from headlines into the cold case vault, where it gathered dust alongside the unspoken fear that the monster who took Sarah might still be walking among them, waiting for another night to strike. Years turned into decades, and the Maplewood Heights that Sarah once knew transformed around the memory of her loss. New families moved in, children grew up hearing whispered stories about the driveway murder, and Sarah's son grew into a young man who only knew her mother through faded photographs and the protective love of grandparents who vowed never to let her memory fade. Detectives retired, evidence boxes yellowed in storage, and the file was reopened only during occasional cold case reviews that always ended the same way. No new leads, no justice, just the heavy weight of a killer who had seemingly outrun time itself. Yet somewhere in the back of every investigator's mind lingered the nagging certainty that monsters like this one rarely stop at one victim. They simply learn to hide better until the world forgets them. Then came the technological revolution of the 2020s, when doorbell cameras like Ring became as common as porch lights themselves, turning ordinary homes into silent, ever-watchful guardians that recorded every shadow and stranger in stunning high-definition detail. What no one could have predicted was that one such unassuming little camera, installed by a new family who had moved into the house directly across from Sarah's old address, would become the digital key that finally unlocked 2 decades of silence and brought a long-buried monster into the blinding light of modern justice. It was an ordinary Tuesday night in late October 2024 when the neighborhood's newest resident, a young couple with a toddler, decided to install their first Ring doorbell camera after hearing local stories about recent porch pirate incidents that had everyone on edge. The sleek black device was mounted above their front door with a clear view of the entire street, its motion sensors calibrated to catch even the slightest movement under the soft glow of the new LED porch light they had added for extra security. Little did they know that their simple decision for peace of mind would soon trigger a chain reaction that would ripple backward through 20 years of unsolved pain and finally drag a long-buried monster into the blinding light of modern justice. Around 2:17 a.m., the camera's infrared night vision suddenly activated with a sharp alert ping on the homeowner's phones, capturing a hooded figure in dark clothing, moving with deliberate, predatory caution along the sidewalk before pausing directly in front of the lens. The intruder, clearly experienced, kept his head lowered at first, but when he reached up to adjust the hood against the light rain that had begun falling, the camera caught a perfect 3-second profile shot of his face, including a distinctive crescent-shaped scar above his left eyebrow that seemed to glow white against his skin in the infrared glow. The man lingered for almost 40 seconds, scanning the quiet houses as if searching for his next target, before melting back into the darkness toward the very end of the street where Sarah Kline's old home still stood, now occupied by a completely different family who had no idea of the history beneath their feet. Within minutes, the footage was shared with local police after the homeowners reported the suspicious activity, and the night shift detective on duty immediately recognized something eerily familiar about the intruder's build and that unmistakable scar. Pulling up the dusty 2004 Kline murder file on his computer, he placed the 2 images side by side, the 2024 ring capture and the old police sketch created from witness descriptions the night Sarah died, and felt his blood run cold as the similarities became impossible to ignore. The scar matched exactly, the height and posture aligned perfectly, and even the slight limp in the left leg that the 2004 witnesses had described was visible in the way the man favored one side while walking away from the camera. What had been a routine burglary report had suddenly become the biggest break in the department's history. Word spread like wildfire through the cold case unit the next morning, and within hours a task force was assembled with forensic experts, digital enhancement specialists, and veteran detectives who had worked the original case as rookies 20 years earlier. The ring footage was analyzed frame by frame, enhanced using the latest AI software, and cross-referenced with every database available, revealing not only the scar, but a partial tattoo on the man's wrist that matched a vague description from a 2004 witness who had seen the killer flee into the woods. The homeowners, stunned by the sudden attention, willingly handed over the full, unedited video and even allowed police to install additional hidden cameras around their property in case the intruder returned, turning their quiet home into an unwitting trap for a killer who had grown arrogant enough to revisit the scene of his original crime after 2 decades of freedom. The breakthrough electrified the entire department
and brought Sarah's now adult son and her aging parents into the station for emotional briefings, where they watched the footage with trembling hands and tear-filled eyes, finally seeing the face of the man who had stolen their entire world in a single violent moment on a summer night so many years ago. What none of them could have known yet was that this single piece of digital evidence was about to trigger a high-stakes manhunt that would end in a dramatic confrontation no one in Maplewood Heights would ever forget. With the enhanced ring footage now the centerpiece of the reopened investigation, detectives began the painstaking process of building a modern case around 20-year-old evidence that suddenly refused to stay buried. The scar and partial tattoo became the focal points of a new public appeal released through local news stations and social media, asking anyone who recognized the man in the footage to come forward immediately, while forensic genealogists worked around the clock, uploading the clearest facial stills into public databases in hopes of generating a family tree match. Within 48 hours, the tips began flooding in, each one more promising than the last, as old neighbors who had moved away years ago suddenly remembered seeing a similar-looking man hanging around the neighborhood in the weeks before Sarah's murder. The turning point came when a distant relative viewing the footage online recognized the scar from family photos and contacted police, leading investigators to a 48-year-old man named Marcus Hale living quietly in a neighboring county under a slightly different last name he had adopted after a minor arrest in 2005. Hale's background check revealed a pattern of escalating violence, petty thefts, domestic disturbances, and one mysterious disappearance of a girlfriend in 2008 that had never been solved. And when detectives quietly obtained a coffee cup from outside his workplace, the DNA matched not only the partial print from Sarah's porch railing, but also trace evidence found under her fingernails from that fateful night. The scientific confirmation sent shockwaves through the station, confirming what the Ring camera had already suggested. The monster had never left the area. He had simply learned to hide in plain sight for 2 full decades. Armed with warrants and the irrefutable combination of digital footage, DNA, and the old fingerprint, the task force planned a careful takedown operation, knowing that a man who had killed once and escaped justice for 20 years might be armed and extremely dangerous if cornered. Surveillance teams were placed around Hale's residence and workplace, while additional Ring cameras were quietly installed on neighboring properties with the owner's cooperation, creating an invisible digital net that would capture his every move in the days leading up to the arrest. The tension in the department was electric, with veteran detectives who had worked the original case in 2004, now mentoring younger officers on the importance of never giving up on cold files, no matter how many years had passed. Meanwhile, Sarah's family was kept closely informed at every step, their mixed emotions of hope, rage, and profound grief creating a powerful undercurrent that motivated every member of the team to see this through to the end. Her son, now a 20-year-old college student who bore her mother's kind eyes, sat in quiet meetings clutching an old photo of the two of them together, whispering promises to her memory that justice was finally coming. The entire community began to feel the shift as rumors spread through Maplewood Heights, porch lights staying on longer at night, and neighbors checking their own Ring apps with newfound vigilance, as if the digital eyes that had solved one nightmare might prevent another from ever beginning. The final piece fell into place when Hale's own phone records, obtained through emergency warrant, showed him driving past Sarah's old address multiple times in the weeks before the Ring footage was captured, almost as if some twisted compulsion had drawn him back to the scene of his original crime after 20 years of freedom. With every new discovery, the noose grew tighter, and the once invisible killer who thought modern technology would never reach him was about to learn the hardest lesson of all. Some eyes never blink, and some cameras never forget.
What the fuck is the design on right now?